So in this lesson, what we're going to take a look at is some things, or at least we're going to start taking a look at some things that we did from yesterday in regards to circle graphs. So you have a circle graph here on the right, and it has favorite games of students. So you're going to want to put this in the review section of your answer sheet. So the directions say use the circle graph to answer each question. So question number 1 says, which activity was the most popular? So if you reference your circle graph over here on the right, you can see that the biggest piece in the circle here would be the 30%, and that's for cricket. So for the answer for number 1, what activity is the most popular, that would be cricket. Question number 2 says, which activity was the least popular? So I'm looking at the circle graph again, and I'm looking for which piece of the circle has the smallest percent, which in this case ends up being chess. So that would be your answer for number 2. Chess would be the least popular of all the activities. Question number 3, it says, what percentage of students' favorite game was tennis? So if you go over to here, tennis, notice here, tennis, 13% of the students said tennis was their favorite game. So that's the answer for number 3. Number 4, it says, what percentage of students' favorite game was soccer or chess? So I got soccer here at 20%, I got chess here at 12%, and if I put those two together, right, that would equal 32%. So that's the answer for number 4. And then for number 5, it says, what 2 games did half the students say was their favorite? So if we're talking about half of the students, we're basically talking about 50% of the students. So if you put 2 percentages together that you would say that would equal 50%, I would put soccer and cricket together, because if you put the 20% and 30% together, that would be 50%. And remember, 50% would be half of the circle. So that would be your answer for number 5. And then number 6 says, if 300 students were polled, how many students said their favorite game was basketball? So this is where we have to find a percentage of a number. So to find what that what that value would be, I want to do 25% of 300. So in order to do that in your calculator, I want to take 25%, I'm going to convert it to a decimal. So if I do 25 divided by 100, that will take 25% and convert it to a decimal, which is 0.25, and then I want to do 0.25 times 300. Remember, of means times. So the answer for this would be 75. So we would say that out of those 300 students, approximately 75 of them said that basketball was their favorite sport. So that's one of the types of things that we did from in class from yesterday. So another type of circle graph question is something like this, very similar. This one has the sneakers that a shoe store sold in a month. So they have it based on the types of sneakers. So question number 1 says, what type of sneaker was most popular? So you can see here, I'm looking for, once again, the piece of the circle with the biggest percentage. That would be Nike, and that would be 32%, and that's your answer for number 1 there. For number 2, what type of sneaker was least popular? So once again, I'm looking for the percent, the piece of the circle with the smallest percent, and that would be here. So you would say the answer for number 2 would be other. For number 3, what percentage of sneakers sold were Nikes? Well, here's Nike, that would be 32%. So that's the answer for number 3. For number 4, we have what percentage of sneakers sold were Reeboks? So here's Reeboks, right? So that would be 15%. So that's for number 4. Number 5 says, what 2 sneakers did a quarter of the sales? So remember, a quarter would be 25%. So I'm looking for which 2 sneakers, not 1 sneaker, but which 2 sneakers or which 2 categories can I put together that would be 25%. So that would be these 2 right here. So you would say if you put Reebok and other together, that would be a quarter of the sales, which would be 25%. And that's the answer for number 5. And then for number 6, we have if 500 sneakers were sold, how many were New Balance? So once again, I want to take a percentage of a number here. So New Balance was 18%. So what I want to know is what's 18% of 500? So in order to do that, I want to take first, I'm going to take 18%, I'm going to convert it to a decimal. So I'm going to do 18 divided by 100, which would be 0.18. So from there, I want to do 0.18 times, just remember of means times 500. So the answer to this would be 90. So we would have 90 students that, or 90 sneakers that were sold that were New Balances. So that's just some things, just reviewing from what we did from yesterday. So drop down in your notes section. I just want to show you this right here. So you don't have to write this down, but one of the things that we're going to look at today has to do with bar graphs. And bar graphs measure how often something occurs, and how often something occurs is referred to as frequency. So you can see here they have a bar graph that lists people's favorite movie type, and they have it based on categories. So there's comedy, there's action, there's romance, drama, and sci-fi. And so 4 people said that comedy was their favorite, 5 people said that action was their favorite, 6 said romance was their favorite, 1 said drama, 4 said sci-fi. So the height of the bars basically measures the frequency. So the more the bigger the frequency for each of the categories, the higher the bar is going to go. That's one of the types of graphs we're going to look at today. Another is what's called a histogram. And once again, you don't have to write this down. I just want you to look at this. So a histogram measures in numerical groups how often something occurred. So if you notice with a bar graph, we have like categories on the bottom, but with a histogram, we have numbers on the bottom. And in particular, we have ranges of numbers on the bottom. So one of the key things to note about the difference between a histogram and a bar graph is that in a bar graph, you want to sort of put some spaces in between your bars. So if you notice with each one of these bars here, I got some spaces in between. But when you make a histogram, you want the bars to be connected. So there's no spaces in between the bars here when you go to do that. Similar to a bar graph, in a histogram, the bars basically measure frequency. So the more frequent, the more values that you have in between the numbers, the higher the bars are going to go. So if we're talking about just making a bar graph, so this question here says, create a bar graph for the given information. So we have the type of shoe that a student wears and how many students wore that particular type. So when I go to make my bar graph for this, I'm just going to kind of put this over here, right? I'm going to put my categories on the bottom. So I got sneaker, and I'm going to abbreviate these. So I got sneaker, I'll put SN, sandal, I'm going to put SA. Then I have high heel, I'll put that as HH. Then I have boot, which will do a B, and then slippers, I'll put SL there. So now if you notice with this, the largest frequency I have is 45. So I want to make sure that my scale on the left-hand side here goes high enough so I can fit that bar in. So I'm going to do this in tens, right? So I'm going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, that's a 4, and then 50. So when I go to do the first bar I have for sneakers 45, so I'm just going to kind of estimate what that's going to look like, so I'll get something that looks kind of like that there. The next one is sandals 28, so that might be like just below the 30, so maybe get something like that. Just note also here, I'm going to put the numbers on top of the bars just like I showed you in that one diagram there. It's always good to put the numbers on top so that you're not trying to guess in terms of what the frequency is for each one of those. My next one is high heel, that's 17, so that might be just below the 20, so I'm going to put a 17 on that. Then I have boot 23, which might be just above the 20, so it might be something that looks like that there. And then I have slippers, which is 8, so I'll put that just below the 10, so I'll put an 8 in there. So that's what the bar graph for this would look like. So just note I have my categories on the bottom for this, and then I also have the frequency values up the side, and then each of the bars represents, the height of each of the bars represents the values that are in the table over here, and notice that I've just put the numbers on top of each one of the bars. Always a good idea to do that. So that's just some different things with bar graphs. When we start to talk about histograms, we're kind of making the same type of graph, but instead of having categories on the bottom, we're going to have these hours of studying on the bottom. So my first bar is going to be from 0 to 2. My next one will be from 3 to 4. My next one will be from 5 to 6. And then I have 7 to 8. And then I have 9 or more. So I'm going to just put that off on the right here. So notice the biggest number here is 17. So when I do this, I'm going to do this in fives. So I got 5, I got 10, I got 15, and then I got 20 at the top here. So when I go to make this first bar 0 to 2, I'm going to go up to 17. So when I do that, I'm just basically going to go a little bit underneath the 20 there. So there's 0 to 2, and then I have 3 to 4, which has a frequency of 6. So remember, with a histogram, you want to work off of the previous bar. So I should put my frequencies in here. That's 17. This is 6. Then the next one would be 3. So I don't know, that might be like right about here. There's a 3, and then the next one is a 2. So that might be like right about here. Put a 2 in there, and then the next one is a 1. I'll put a 1 in there like that. So that's basically what a histogram looks like. So just note that you have the numbers on the bottom instead of the categories, And also note that the bars are all connected to each other when you make a histogram. And that's what makes it a little bit different than a bar graph. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is take your assignment, okay, and flip over your answer sheet and work on the assignment practice problems 2.3e, staple everything together and turn it in when you're finished.